Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
All right, let's get this thing going. Episode 86 of Fathers of the Grind. This podcast by a couple of nerd dads who barely have time to play video games, and so we sacrifice sleep in order to game, basically. Because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And my name is Tim Nestor, here with Derek Teague, as usual. And this week is interesting. I feel like this is the week, this end of August time is when we're launching into a series of weeks and really a couple months of game after game after game. And so this week kind of kicks that off as we talk about Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Now, to be really clear, I want to make sure that we try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. Yeah. There's really not a lot to spoil in this game. But that being said, we will keep it free from, ruining the story or, any major moments that jump out at us for you. So you can listen if you haven't played it yet. We're going to keep it safe for you, I guess. But that being said, there really isn't a ton to spoil about this game. So that'll be most of our conversation. But before that, we're going to talk about stuff we're playing. So yeah, what's going on, man? What's going on with you? It's Sunday afternoon. Yeah. We both missed recording last night because of the McGregor-Mayweather fight.
Did you watch it?
I did. I found a less than legal link to kind of watch a real grainy stream of it.
Okay. So I actually went to a party, which I didn't know I was going to. Megan, that's my wife, is real close to all the soccer moms and even the soccer dads, and so they decided one of the families was ordering the fight, and then they invited all the families over, and I'm like, I don't really want to go, but whatever, I'll go. So we went and we watched all the fights. I'm not a boxing fan, make that clear. Yeah. I like MMA, but I don't like boxing. I find it boring. And to be fair, or to be honest, most of the bouts were boring, except I did find the Conor McGregor and Mayweather fight to actually be entertaining. And I think it's because I actually, to a certain extent, care. I'm not a big McGregor fan. I don't like Mayweather at all, but I really wanted McGregor to win. I wanted him, I guess it's one of those moments where it's like, I wanted him to shock the world. And,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's easy to cheer for the underdog. I was there with you.
I'm recording. Can you not have that on right now, please?
Ice.
Teague family. I mean, it's fine if they're out here. I don't care. It's just the fact that Emily's like, they're gonna fight right now. Okay, guys, I'm legit recording. You're on TV right now.
Live to the world.
You are on YouTube.
I know. I have my own YouTube channel.
You don't have to tell him about it. He's a pro. He already gets
Been there, done that, Dad. I have more subscribers than you.
Then you got nothing to teach me on this one, Dad.
Whatever. They can embarrass themselves. So, anyways, it ended up being fun. A little disappointing that McGregor tired out, but that was what I was kind of expecting. I was like, he either has to knock him out in the first 4 or 5 rounds, or he's going to lose.
Yeah, and it looked good at first, but then, as listening to the experts break it down, it sounds like Mayweather was doing what many who know him really well thought he would do, and that is
wear him out.
Just kind of feel it out for the first few rounds. He wanted to see how McGregor was going to fight. And then, so McGregor won, according to most people, the first 3 rounds, and maybe even grabbed another round in the middle there. Mm-hmm. But once Mayweather had him figured out, then it was really hard for Conor to land any punches, and McGregor was Mayweather was just a dominant boxer from the middle rounds all the way through the end, and he had the stamina that McGregor didn't in terms of that type of fighting.
Well, and that we're a boxing podcast, and again, I said I'm not a fan, but I felt like, as a noob, I felt like I don't understand how McGregor's corner didn't see what was happening. I understand Mayweather is a passive boxer. He sits back, he's more reactionary, he's more of a counter. But he was clearly not boxing the first 3 rounds, and that should have popped in their heads that he's resting. Like, he's saving his stamina.
Right.
And I think it's the ego of McGregor, because I know McGregor takes this stuff serious. He works out nonstop. He's constantly running. He's constantly staying in shape. I think it's his ego that was the downfall, and that was he thought he would not get tired. And clearly, if you watch rounds 7 through 10, he starts off fast. He comes out. He does this for about 30 seconds, and then after 30 seconds, he starts backpedaling, and he's backpedaling.
Yep, and his guard drops.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I was like, he's getting tired. He's done. And then round 10, he was completely done. It was so
by the end of
obvious.
round 9, I was surprised he made it out of round 9. Because I thought it looked like he's about to collapse.
Yeah.
But then round 10, it's one of those things, his guard wasn't up, and he just kept taking punches. So even, again, I'm the same way. I'm not a big boxing fan or big boxing expert or anything like that, but I have watched a good number of fights, and you could see, I mean, the writing was on the wall by, I would say really round 8, but definitely round 9, you could see, all right, this is not going to make it to 12 rounds.
Yeah.
So it was an entertaining fight. It kind of reminded me of a lot of boxing movies over the years, where you've got the underdog comes in, loses the fight, but still kind of wins the moral victory in terms of he stood toe to toe with one who many consider to be one of the best ever, if not the best ever.
I mean,
and yeah, he's 50-0. He's never lost. He's beat pretty much all the greats over the last 20 plus years. And he stood toe-to-toe with him for a while. And, yes, he was outboxed, but I think a lot of people had more respect for McGregor after the fight.
I do.
I think
I do.
He lost a ton of respect because of his trash talking, and he was quite unpleasant if you watched any of the pre-fight stuff. But after the fight, they gave each other the hug, all of a sudden, all that stuff's water under the bridge, and great job. I think if he wants to be a boxer instead of MMA fighter, he totally could at this point. I think he could.
if you watch his skills, he
could make that switch.
He's extremely skilled. And
he's very fast.
I think
he's very fast.
I think he was better than Mayweather. I understand Mayweather's strategy. I'm not dumb. But I still think he was better than Mayweather, even when Mayweather started to open up and start throwing. McGregor was the better boxer until he got tired. And then clearly that was when Mayweather was like, oh, I see it. He's done. And that's when he went after
it. Yeah, see, I'm not sure if I could make that call one way or the other, just again, my lack of knowledge about boxing.
Well,
but I feel
what I was watching was how fast his hands were and his angles.
His hands, he was very fast. And his
he was changing
agility.
His stances. He was confusing Mayweather. So is he better than Mayweather in his prime? No, because he doesn't have the training. But at 40 years old, you guys got to remember, Mayweather's 40 years old. I don't think he's clearly better than McGregor. I think McGregor could have
so
won.
it took the combination of strategy and just technical ability.
Yeah, I think McGregor would have won if he didn't tire out. I really do.
Yeah.
But he tired out.
I do remember in the post-fight, McGregor said something about, you should let me fight until I hit the mat, basically. Let me keep going. I was just out of energy. He shouldn't have called the fight. But on the other hand, I feel like he was able to go out with some dignity, still on his feet,
Mm-hmm.
Clearly was dazed, and he was done. And the ref called it. But I think if he would have been laid out and laying down there unconscious on the floor, it probably would have been a much more embarrassing day for him in the follow-up. But anyway, all that being said, I would be a horrible boxer. I'll just put it out there. I would be awful. And, I do think we should have a Fathers of the Grind boxing match.
We should.
Okay, so before we shift out of our very unskilled and lack of knowledge boxing chat to open things up, if you could punch one famous person, who would it be? And if you could be punched by one famous person, who would it be?
Who's that feminist, the annoying video game one?
Oh, Sarkeesian?
Yeah, I'd hit her. She's annoying.
Okay.
But it only if I can knock her out permanently. She'll never talk again. Otherwise, it would be a waste.
Right in the middle of one of her streams of a game that she doesn't know anything about, but she's trying to call it out. Okay. All right. And if you had to be punched by one famous person, who would it be?
Probably by her, just because it wouldn't hurt.
Her too.
She's a girl, so she. Sexist.
Oh man. Yeah. I think if you said that to her before she hit you, you might be asking for a little bit harder punch than usual.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't rile her up. All right, so anyone who's listening who is triggered right now, we are not sorry. That was funny.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. All right. Well, let's get into some video game talk. I know that both of us, one of the things we've been playing this past week was Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, the kind of a spin-off game from Uncharted 4. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we won't dive into that right now. We both know that we both played that. We both finished that game. Let's talk about that in a few minutes. What else have you been playing this past week that you want to talk about?
Last Sunday I started Uncharted 4 again. Well, not really started it. I was already I think 5 chapters in. From I think it was 6 or 7 months ago I'd started it just to see what it looked like on my brand new 4K, HDR TV, and I thought it looked beautiful, but I only played 5 chapters. Anyway, so I wanted to play it again because I wanted to see if my opinion of the game would change, mainly because while I liked it, I think I even scored it a 10 when you and I did the spoiler cast. Because I was objectively, it's really good. I would probably change that score even for an objective score. I think I was being stupid. But subjectively, I did not like the game as much as other people. I felt like it dragged. I didn't like the brother. I felt like he was forced in. It didn't make sense with where the trilogy was. And I know others feel that way too. I'm not alone in that they feel like the brother, he never mentioned him ever. There was a lot of things I didn't like about it. So I wanted to replay it. I'm at chapter 12. Definitely enjoying it more this time. I think it does come with the whole, I already know how this game plays because I've done it before, so it makes it a little bit easier. Not that this is a Dark Souls type game. It's not, obviously. But there was some frustrations when I played it originally because they don't force you to do stealth. You're not forced to do it. But the game is more realistic in terms of if you don't do stealth, you could have a rough time in certain areas.
Yeah, you could get overwhelmed pretty easily in that game.
So I have definitely been stealthing more, which is something I'll talk about with Lost Legacy as well. So I've been stealthing it a little bit more, and then after I feel like I've got the numbers in my favor, then I'll quickly go to action and just start firing on everybody. But overall, really enjoying it. Story's pretty good still. Obviously, it's
do you think
game.
you're not as frustrated with some of that stuff this time because you have an idea of how long it's going to take? Maybe in the first playthrough, you were just how much longer will this climbing section
be? The game
be?
kind of drags.
Do you think it's padded out a little bit with some of those environmental climb here things that they don't really need?
Well, I mean, think about it this way. I'm on chapter 12 of 22, so I'm just a little over halfway through, and I've probably put 8 or 9 hours into it. So for an action adventure game, it's pretty long.
Yeah.
It's not
and for one that doesn't have really any RPG elements to it.
Yeah, there's no RPG. It's not like I'm wasting time upgrading or anything. You're literally playing the game for 18 hours.
Yeah.
Again, still enjoying it. It's fun. The only other game...
Still the best game from 2016.
No.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have terrible taste. And then
true, but
the
I'm
other
right.
thing I've been playing a lot this week is Ghost Recon. I'm enjoying it a lot more as well. I liked it when it first launched, but I remember when I bought it, it was supposed to be a co-op game, and I was like, I'm only going to play it co-op. Now I'm just playing it on my own too when you're not on, and I'm enjoying it by myself. I'm just going through the world, going from mission to mission, and I'm trying to play it stealth. Even
with those
solo.
sync shots with your AI buddies.
Yeah, and I'm enjoying that. It's very satisfying because what I'm doing is I'm syncing up. I think I have 3 sync shots.
Yep,
so
that's
I'm
what I've got
syncing up
too.
3, and then I'm marking one myself. So as soon as I shoot it, they shoot theirs. So it's very satisfying, especially when you land your shot.
Yep.
And then 3 or 4 guys are knocked down with it. So it's
really the benefit of that is the AI never misses, which is great. When you're playing with other people, there's the fun of communicating with another human being and playing, together. But you do have to worry about the human error. When you're playing with AI, if you sync up shots, as long as they have their mark, sometimes they can't see them if they're under a building or whatever. But if they have their mark, they never miss.
Well,
and I'm with you. It's fun. You take out 4 enemies at a time. Basically, work your way through every area
Yeah.
4 enemies at a time, and then once you're ready, you just unload, just to open fire, and,
Yeah,
and
which
just
is that's what I like.
Mhm.
I'm doing it in
Yep.
Uncharted, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm not the type that likes to do stealth 100% of the time, but I'm also, wow, I would love to be Chuck Norris or something like that. I realize that these games, and same thing when I talked about Dishonored 2, it's the same thing. They give you the freedom, but they say with that freedom comes consequences if you choose to go
Mhm.
in guns blazing. So I try to do half and half. I enjoy the half
Well,
and half.
especially if it's the Unidad, because they'll start calling in all sorts of reinforcements.
Yeah.
So when you're going after on your mini map, they're the purple troops. When you go after those guys, if you're not careful, they will quickly call in reinforcements, and they will overwhelm you because they're smarter and they have more armor. They're tougher. The rebels are a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm.
But they still can call in reinforcements as well. So anyway, I like to do a combination of both because the guns are really fun to shoot. There's a wide variety of guns. I've upgraded to like grenade launchers and all that kind of stuff. So I like opening fire and then just having a big old shootout across this big area. But I first like to take out the snipers,
Yeah.
maybe some of the guys by the front gate, and kind of set myself up where I'll have a position to have some cover, and then just start shooting.
Yeah, and I had
it's
fun
fun.
like playing with you on one particular mission, not the one where you drove over my mines like an idiot. But there was one particular mission where there was probably like 8 to 10 guys, and I went right, you went left, and we
Yeah.
talked the entire time. Like none
Yeah.
of us took shots unless we were communicating, and we ended up. I think we fully stealthed it. Like nobody knew we were there. Like we
Yeah.
kept taking out the outside guys and kind of just working it in. And that was fun too. Like it felt
Yep.
good. Now that was a smaller like base. Bigger base is a little bit more difficult to do stuff like that, especially with 2
Right.
guys. But it was fun doing it that way.
Yep.
It's a good game. Real
Yep.
good game.
It's a very good game.
Very popular
it's actually-
game. Apparently, it's the Ubisoft's like biggest selling game of 2017.
Ghost Recon Wildlands is?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It's selling.
Well,
very,
I'm glad
very
it's
well.
popular. It's deserving. I mean, it is a really fun game. It's a good-looking game. It's not. I don't think it's going to win the best visuals of the year because there are so many pretty games out this
Think
year.
Yeah, it's not the best looking, but for what
But
they're giving
it
you,
is good-looking, though.
yeah, for like how big it is on the PS4,
Yep.
it looks amazing. On the PS4 Pro with 4K.
You get that
HDR,
HDR, and the
yeah.
lighting looks great.
I'm a
Of
big
course, you need to use
SOCOM fan, like a huge SOCOM fan. So
Okay.
when you and I were actually playing it legit and like stealthing and stuff, it brought me back to my SOCOM days where I was like,
Old SOCOM
this
days,
is what
yeah.
I used to do all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, no, it's a fun game. If you are into military shooters, kind of third person, somewhat stealth, but a lot of times just action. Jumping in a helicopter, very open world. If that intrigues you at all, if you're listening to this, then go try this game out. You could probably find it for cheap at this point. Came out earlier this year. It's oftentimes on sale. It's a really fun game, especially if you have friends to play with. But the single player version, where you've got 3 AI buddies, is actually pretty fun as well.
Yeah.
I've been doing the same thing. When I don't partner up with somebody, I've just used my AI teammates to go through and gather skill points and new weapons and take down some story missions. So, and that is one of the things that I've been playing a lot this week. I actually just cleared my 3rd map area yesterday, so I've got 3 of those. It's a very large map.
Yeah.
And each area that you take down, you're taking down a key cog in the main cartel's support system, their support structure. So I've taken down 3 of them, and it's just really fun. Unlocking new abilities. I think I'm on level 13, something like that. But every time you unlock a new skill or ability or a new loadout, a new scope or suppressor, those things really change the way you play. It's really, really fun. So highly recommend Ghost Recon Wildlands. It's a nice looking game. It's fun to play. The guns feel good. There's of course a few negatives here and there. It's been a tad bit glitchy during my single player experience, but nothing crazy at all. For the size of the game, you expect that from time to time. And I mean, like, in terms of having an enemy spawn on me right after I killed him. All of a sudden, he spawned right there again.
Yeah.
Things like that. That just little glitches here. Nothing major. And then there is some loading. Whether you're doing fast travel or whether you die, you will sit there looking at those loading screens for not super long, maybe 15, 20 seconds, but it adds up. Feels like it adds up after a while. So those are the only negatives about it. Otherwise, I'm having a blast with Ghost Recon Wildlands. And, of course, also finished Uncharted Lost Legacy this week. And I did, after last week, chatting with you a little bit, I did decide to kind of put my head down and keep pushing through Nioh.
Yeah.
And so I finished that first area, beat that first boss on the boat there, the first real boss.
Mm-hmm.
On the boat there, that was really fun, very satisfying to beat that boss. Got to the next area and totally cleared out that area. So I'm starting to level up. I'm getting stronger.
Yeah.
And I got to the second major boss. It's kind of this vampire flying enemy who can paralyze you, and I can't get
I couldn't
anywhere
beat her.
with that fight. I am stuck on that fight.
I couldn't beat her by myself when I first played. So on that one, I did get help. That was the only one in the first 9 bosses I fought that I needed help with. But then, spoilers, you fight her later, and I beat her solo. So she is difficult, is my point. So I mean, if you got to get help, you got to get help.
Yeah. Yeah, so I might have to do that because otherwise I'm enjoying it. I'm starting to feel pretty
Here's
strong
the
in
thing
that game.
I suggest when playing games like Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and even Nioh. I'm not saying to do this all the time. I'm saying challenge yourself to try to beat them solo. If you can't, don't quit the game because of that. That's what a lot of people do. Get help, beat it, then maybe as you get stronger, better, or even do a new game plus. That's what I did with Bloodborne. I think I beat half the bosses by myself the first time I played through Bloodborne. And remember, I was a Souls noob when I was playing through Bloodborne. So half was awesome to me. I was like, I beat half of them by myself. I then replayed the game, and by the time I was done playing all my playthroughs, I think I beat it 3 times now. I have beat every single boss solo except I think 1 side boss.
Okay.
Everything else
All right.
I beat solo because I got better and better and better, and then eventually I didn't need anybody's help. So my point to you is if you're actually having fun with Nioh, but you're stuck on this boss, don't let this boss stop you. A, you're gonna face her again. Beat her with help, and then fight her later.
Yeah. So I've tried probably 5 times now. So it hasn't been an extreme. I know in some of these games you can get up in the 20s and 30s on attempts and then just say forget it. So it's maybe only 5 or 6 times that I've tried and died. The last time I played it, this was probably 3 days ago. Last time I played it, I was starting to pick up on the pattern of her attacks. You know, there's definitely a pattern. It's the paralyzed attack that usually ends up killing me. You know, there was a couple times I thought I was in a groove, and I was like, wow, I'm not doing a lot of damage, but if I can keep in this groove, I'll slowly chip away and beat her. But then all it took was one time of mistiming a dodge. I got paralyzed. She came over and did her one-hit kill on me. And I was like, well, that's nice. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I think if I'm persistent enough with it, and if I go back and, like you said, you can request help in that game, maybe that's the way to do it. Yep. So it is very fun, though. I'll tell you, Nioh is it's holding on my definitely in my top 10 list. So, it's interesting. I was starting to work through some of my top games of the year so far.
Yeah.
Before we get into this crazy, end of August through November. And Nioh is fighting for a pretty high spot on that list right now. It's a lot of fun. Same with Ghost Recon Wildlands. These 2 games, kind of similar to Mass Effect Andromeda, where I can see the flaws. In Nioh, I can see where it's going to get repetitive. In Ghost Recon, it's got some flaws in the storytelling, and some of the writing is real cheesy, and they didn't really try hard with the story. And then with Mass Effect Andromeda, a lot of technical issues, but all of them have just been fun to play. Once you learn their systems and you get in there to play, it's just like when you turn the game off, that's all you keep thinking about is you want to get back in that world and play some more. So these are the kind of games that are holding my attention, and I'm really enjoying them. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, is it the RPG side of Nioh that's hooking you? I mean, I understand you like the combat. The reason I'm asking is because while Bloodborne lacks the depth of Nioh when it comes to RPG, I think the combat is more satisfying in Bloodborne. Maybe it's because it's more one-on-one. Sure, there's multiple enemies sometimes.
Did someone just open fire with
Emily, I'm recording. Can you please stop? She just makes a lot of noise. Like, wherever she goes, that's just what she does.
Teenagers, man. That's what teenagers do.
She just doesn't care. But anyways, I was going to say, I think you would, if you're really enjoying Nioh, I would think you would like Bloodborne a lot because
Here's the thing with Bloodborne, and I wonder if it's as simple as getting into the options and changing some of the settings. I was not digging the control scheme whatsoever. So the whole R1 and R2 style of fighting, I was just having trouble, number one, learning that, but really wanting to, because it just didn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
There was something about just wanting square as weak attack, triangle as strong attack.
see, I'm the opposite. When I played Nioh, I found myself frustrated with the fact
Because you can
that I
switch
couldn't
Nioh over to the
R1
the
and
triggers,
R2.
right? Yeah.
I didn't end up
Yeah.
doing it. I told you we've had a show on this before where we talked about this, and I normally don't change controls. I think the only game recently that I've done was Metal Gear Solid 5. I changed it to like first-person shooter type controls.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it changed like the way you shoot and stuff, and I was like, oh, this feels like most games I play, and that's it. Nioh and all those, I don't change them. I'm just like, well, over time I'll get used to it, and it is true. When I play Nioh, over time I get used to using it, but it's more comfortable because I've played Bloodborne 3 times and Dark Souls 3 a couple times. Like, I've gotten used to the R1, R2, and it feels more natural now.
I mean, it's the same thing with, I think about a game like Dying Light, which I really enjoyed, but the jump button was L1, I think. Just when you kind of throw that kind of monkey wrench into how I normally play a game like that, it can either click, and with Dying Light, fortunately it did click with the whole parkour style of gameplay, running through the environment. It did end up clicking. I got why they were doing it that way. With Bloodborne, 100% transparent, totally honest, I didn't give it the chance to click. I only played that game. We talked about this plenty of times. For less than an hour did I play that game. I killed a few of the little mobs here and there, and then some kind of larger mob guy. He looked like a mini boss or something. He took me out pretty quickly, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll keep playing this, but I didn't. So I did not give that game a chance to really
if you
enjoyable.
really like Nioh, again, let's see how far you go. Second boss out of what, like 20-something in the game?
Right.
So
right.
you've got a long way to go. If it really, truly hooks you and you're like, I just want to keep playing this, then yes, I highly suggest giving Bloodborne a real shot, because I think, and I like both games a lot, I think Bloodborne's easily the superior game when it comes to gameplay and just pure fun. I think Nioh destroys it with the RPG side, but I also think Nioh's a little too over the top of that. Like, I would have to go in my inventory all the time because I'm like, I have like 1,000 swords. I have to which ones am I destroying and all this stuff? What should I do?
Disassemble and sell the parts, right?
I wasted so many hours just doing that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do enjoy the RPG elements of it, but I don't know that that's what's keeping me engaged. You know, I've played games with similar RPG systems that didn't keep me engaged, so I do think it is mainly a combination of the way the combat feels, but I also really like the setting. I like the enemies I'm fighting against. I like the way it looks.
Yeah.
I like that whole samurai, Far East setting. I think it's really cool. So there's a number of different factors as to why I like it, but I definitely hit pause on it to dive into the main game we're talking about today, and that is Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Everything was put on hold while I fired this game up this past week. So here's what we're going to do in our discussion of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I want us to talk about it just like we normally do when we sit together and talk about a game that just recently came out. We'll give it our breakdown in terms of visuals and how it plays and the story. But then I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about spin-off games like this, whether it's a DLC, an expansion, or what seems to be, in this case, a standalone experience from the game it's its foundation. So I want to talk about that a little bit and how we should look at this in terms of Game of the Year discussion, but also just in general, how it stacks up to other games' little spin-off experiences. So we'll get to that shortly. But first of all, let's start talking Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Before we really break it down to its components, we both finished this game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we both completed it. We are not going to spoil anything. There are a few moments, a few characters that you get to see that maybe you didn't expect. So we won't talk about that. We will try not to mention any names.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, do you feel like this was up to snuff as an Uncharted experience?
Yeah, I would rank it as one of my favorite Uncharted experiences.
All right, well, tell you what, when we're done talking about the breakdown, let's rank them. Let's figure out how it compares to the other ones, or just where it would rank. Okay, well, let's talk about components of it first, because I agree. It was one of my favorite Uncharted experiences as well. But let's start with the most obvious. It's the most obvious thing with any video game you play, and that is the visuals, the environments, the settings. What did you think about the overall visuals and environment for this game?
It's on par with Uncharted 4, which would make sense because, again, it's technically attached to the season pass of Uncharted 4. You can buy it standalone if you did not buy the season pass. But if you did buy the season pass, you got this game as basically its main DLC for that pass. So they obviously used the Uncharted 4 engine, and so therefore it's on par. Like I wouldn't say there's an improvement over it, especially since I'm playing Uncharted 4 right now. I feel like they look exactly the same. As far as environments, I really liked the environments in this game. While it is a smaller package and you travel to less areas than you would in, say, Uncharted 4, I thought where we were located and the main places that we were very visually appealing, and I like it. I like the kind of like the forest and green setting. Like I like that probably more than anything. I like it more than deserts. While I do like the snow and stuff like that, I don't like all white atmospheres and stuff like that. So
That's
I
surprising coming from you. Interesting.
yeah, lights from. So I like the lush green look with. I prefer a little bit of snow or something like that. That's one of the reasons why I like Dragon Age Inquisition is because most of the game you're playing in like a nice green foresty area with cold weather and stuff like that. But anyways, I really felt like the environments and the locations that you were very, very appealing. I really liked it.
Yeah.
I liked the visuals overall. I would score
Yeah, not
it
a lot of variety. I agree
very
with you
high.
there. There's basically three main types of environments. You've got a city type of environment, kind of an urban environment. And then you've got your outdoors, like you were describing, where you're kind of out in this forest. There's some rivers and things like that, some open areas, but mostly lots of green and lots of trees. And then, of course, there's kind of the underground / temple type settings as well, which is classic to Uncharted and very reminiscent to me of like recent Tomb Raider games too.
Yep.
So yeah, visually I thought it was amazing. The two main characters, Chloe and Nadine, by the way, that is not a spoiler because they're right on the cover. They're in every piece of advertising for this game. You control Chloe, who is also from Uncharted 2 and 3. Is she mentioned in 4? I don't think she's even mentioned in 4, is she?
I think they mentioned her.
They might mention her, but yeah, but she's not in 4.
Yeah.
But she's a pretty major side character from 2, especially, and then also in 3. And then, of course, Nadine, one of the kind of quasi-villains from Uncharted 4, has teamed up with Chloe for reasons I won't get into. But yeah, so they're the two main characters. They are the ones who get the most screen time. It really zooms in on their expressions as they talk to each other, and in certain cutscenes, you get to really see the emotion on their faces. I really appreciated the high quality visuals in this game in the same way I did with Uncharted 4, where you could see in Uncharted 4 it was all about Nathan Drake and his brother Sam, who had come back into the picture, and then of course Elena in some ways too, seeing their emotions and their struggles and the weight behind what was happening. I really, really appreciated that. And same here. Even though I didn't think the story was quite as strong, which we'll get to, I did like seeing the way the visuals enhanced the storytelling, just like with UC4. So very impressive. I totally agree with you. The environments looked great. I can't think of anything really detrimental to say about the visuals. Other than, here's one thing I'll say is most of the enemies you fight, there's probably only 3 or 4, maybe 5 templates that I really noticed in terms of how they look. Not a lot of variety in the enemies that you fight. That's to be expected in a game like this. You're not fighting, it's not a sci-fi game where you're fighting animals or aliens. You're fighting human beings who are all from the same general area. They're all soldiers for this cause, and so it's not a surprise. But in terms of variety, there was a little bit lacking there. But that's really, really nitpicky. Overall, it was a beautiful game. Not a lot to criticize with that. Speaking of fighting enemies, what do you think about the combat in this? And did you notice anything different from Uncharted 4 when you were fighting?
I don't know if I noticed anything different. it felt the same. It felt the same as Uncharted 4. And not jumping ahead, I think the only reason why I would say I like this game more than Uncharted 4 is this game is more to the point. Like, hi, here are these two characters. Boom,
Right.
they're involved in conflict right away. Whereas,
And their
spoilers,
conversations fill you
Uncharted
in.
4 takes forever. Because
Well,
it's
Uncharted
like,
4 shows you everything, right? Like, you
Yeah.
actually play through everything, whereas Lost Legacy, Chloe and Nadine talk about everything. Like, as you're driving or as you're climbing around,
Mhm.
there's conversation going that, for me at least, with my headphones and listening, I felt totally filled in on why they were there, what their goals were, what their motivations for each character was, and I didn't need any cutscenes or flashbacks because they filled it all in with that dialogue. So I liked that. It felt cleaner
Yeah.
and more efficient in terms of catching me up to what was happening.
I mean, I will say I enjoyed the combat in this game more, but again, I don't know if that's more from me being more comfortable with it because I had already played Uncharted 4. Um, I didn't feel like I was more powerful as Chloe or anything like that because again, it's not an RPG game. Chloe to me plays the same as Nate Drake. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought it was a fun game. Like I had a lot of fun with like the set pieces. I had a lot of fun with the areas you would walk in. You're like, clearly, I'm gonna fight here, and I liked it.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
going back to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about games we were playing, that mixture of stealth with action combat. This game really allows you to choose how you want to play it. And I was choosing in a lot of those areas where I knew it was going to get difficult to do stealth. And there was only a few times where I had troubles stealthing. And again, I didn't stealth all the way through, but I'm saying in the beginning, like, hey, I want to pick off these 3 outside characters and then work myself in a little bit, take the sniper up top, and then once the sniper's down, let's see who else is around in the inside areas. But I didn't find it to be very difficult. Whereas there's even my second playthrough on Uncharted 4, there's one area in particular where there was probably 12 enemies, and every time I would try to stealth while I was killing like an outside character, somebody would spot me, and I was like, this feels frustrating because it doesn't feel. And again, I always said I'm terrible at stealth, so this could just all be me. But every time I played this game, I'm like, I cannot figure out how to stealth, in particular this one area, because as soon as I kill one person, somebody left, right, above me spots me, and I'm like, well, I don't have a silencer. That's another thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm probably not going to remember right. I don't remember having a lot of silent type weapons in Uncharted 4. Whereas in Lost Legacy, one of the things I like is if you go to um, if you explore a little bit outside the combat area and even sometimes in the combat area, you'll find like these locked cases. And if you unlock them, you can unlock like silencers and
Yep.
and
You
just
can get some of the grenade launcher type stuff that you get in the
RPGs,
UC4.
stuff like that. Whatever the area is, like if you're
But
fighting,
most importantly, I agree with you. Getting that silenced pistol is awesome.
So that allowed me to stealth better because I was like, okay, I can go and break this guy's neck, and then to the right, he's 15 yards off. I can then quickly pick him off with a headshot, and that was what I was doing. And I don't remember having that with Uncharted 4. I don't remember having silenced weapons or anything like that.
I don't think there was a silenced weapon in that.
I
but I don't remember,
totally
to be
think
honest.
in a game like that, and this isn't me going back and saying, well, Uncharted 4 is now a 4 out of 10 because they didn't do this. But I think going forward, if they're going to make these Uncharted type games where they're like, okay, we're going to put 15 people in here. If you choose to like shoot your shotgun, they're all going to be alerted. They're going to swarm you. They're going to surround you. Okay, cool. That's your choice. But give me the choice, if you're wanting or encouraging me to stealth, to have like a silencer on my pistol. Like you would think Nathan Drake would be or whoever you play as in the future games, smart enough to go, hey, I'm going to run into an enemy.
Yeah.
Let me bring a silencer with me. I can
Yeah, I
afford
mean,
it
with
with
the
all my
direction they've
treasure.
gone with 4, with Lost Legacy, and if you think back to The Last of Us, those games all included very heavy elements of stealth, and they were very important to those games. Now, yes, technically at any point you could break things open and just go guns blazing, and Last of Us specifically, that was going to be really tough to do, but you could, and but I do think stealth's going to continue to be an important component for Naughty Dog games moving forward. So I'm with you. I do hope that they open it up a little bit in terms of you can use guns if you want. Maybe they give you more melee weapons outside of sneaking up and breaking necks or whatever. It would be interesting if they opened that up a bit too. I'm with you there. I felt like the combat was good, not great, but I felt the same way about Uncharted 4. It was well done. The shooting feels better than previous Uncharted games. It felt good to hit a headshot, or really just to start launching the grenade launcher or RPG type stuff at guys and blow them all up in big groups. That felt good too. Chloe moves around very, quickly, just like Nate Drake did. I think the only difference is in some of the melee moments, I didn't feel like she was quite as strong as he was. I don't know if that was just me being a sexist like you are and thinking she's weaker, or if that's actually, if it was different. It felt like she didn't have as much power, and so there were moments when you're doing melee, especially in certain fights that you have to fight melee, that Nadine and Chloe would team up in some cool ways to take certain characters out. That was really cool. I liked that a lot. The way that they had you team up.
I will say this, since you brought it up, and I'm glad you did, because I was actually going to mention it, and I always forget. I hate the melee combat in the Uncharted games that are like boss fights. I absolutely hate them. They're kind of like quick time events, but without like the alert, hey, this is what you should do. And
it's something you haven't done all game, and all of a sudden the entire game rides on it.
Yeah, and it feels off. And I'm not going to spoil it when you do it in this game, but just know it's in it, just like it was in Uncharted 4, and I think it was even in Uncharted 3 and 2 and all that. I hate it. Like, I just wish they would let me play even those boss areas like you've played other parts of the games. That's one thing that Deus Ex Mankind Divided did real smart, because they screwed it up with Human Revolution, and that is they gave you the freedom of choice, and then when it was a boss battle in Human Revolution, they're like, guns blazing only. And then finally in Mankind Divided, because they got so much negative feedback, they figured out, okay, now you can beat a boss without even fighting him. If you can get to him without him ever spotting, you can come behind him and choke him out, or do whatever you got to do. I feel like these games need to get to that point where they're not pre-programming and got to do a fist fight, so it's more dramatic. Like, hey, let's do another way where we give the player the choice on how they kill this final boss or this secondary boss, whatever it is. And that is, if you're going to encourage stealth, or if you're going to encourage, hey, the player can do whatever they want to go full in combat, then you can kill them with a sniper rifle, or you can kill them by poisoning them, or kill them in some other way. I feel like games should evolve to that. And again, I'm not saying Uncharted has to do that. I always play the games for what they are. I'm just saying I hate personally the stupid boss type combat fights that they have that are
at the
hard
end
to
of
read.
Uncharted 4 there is a sword fight type of
I
a
hate
thing
it.
that did not happen in the entire game, but now all of a sudden in the final battle of the game you're using swords, and they basically are introducing a new set of gameplay rules to you in terms of dodging and attacking and parrying, and it's like, what happened to Uncharted? This is not what I signed up for. When you think about the ending of Uncharted 2, I guess 3 was this way too. Uncharted 2, I thought was a great final boss fight, because you had to use all the environment stuff you've been doing all game. You have to use your weapons. You have to pick up stuff quickly and throw grenades, and the bad guys coming after you. And I felt like I was trying to use all these skills that the game had many of the skills the game had taught me throughout, in battling all these different enemies. That made sense to me. Same thing with games like Nioh or The Witcher, where you kind of get to the point where, okay, now I've got to put to use, or Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, let me put to use all the stuff I've upgraded or at least used this whole game and take this boss out. So I'm totally with you there. I do think it added some dramatic flair to the end of Uncharted 4, as well as to some of the final fights in this game, to have it more personal and up close. I think they didn't need to create a whole new combat system that they only used once or twice. That's silly to me, especially for such key encounters. Because when you die, and I did die once or twice, trying to figure out how to properly execute these moves, it was frustrating. It kind of interrupts the experience. It reminds you that you're playing a game, and it's almost like they're trying to teach you a brand new thing right at the end of the game. It's very awkward. So I'm with you. I think they could have still had it play out the way it did, but perhaps take out the whole gameplay part of that. Maybe give you some quick time buttons to hit so you feel involved if you want to. But otherwise, just let me fight my way to that point and then show me that part. If you don't want it to be a standard gunfight to close things out, just show me that in a cutscene at the end. But again, it feels a little nitpicky because overall the combat is fun, but there are moments where I'm reminded the way Naughty Dog likes to do some of these key moments in their games, I'm still not the biggest fan of, despite the fact that I really love their games. So
Yeah.
I don't love the way they do that. Let's talk about characters real quick. We already mentioned Chloe and Nadine are the lead characters. There's the main antagonist in this game is introduced right in the first chapter, so this is not a spoiler. It's a guy named Asav, and I think he's a good villain, although you don't really get to see him a ton throughout the game. Most of it is all about Chloe and Nadine and this relationship that they have that really it's a really roller coaster of an experience with these two. What did you think, without any spoilers, of course, overall about the characters of this game? How did you feel they were portrayed? What did you think about Chloe and Nadine?
All right, so to start with, I already like Chloe from previous Uncharted games. She's very selfish. So it's normally not the type of woman I would like, but
she's
very
honest
selfish.
about it.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about her. She's kind of blunt and just says, "This is what I'm doing. I'm not here for you. I'm here for myself."
She's also funny. Like, she's very witty, kind of like Nate Drake.
Yeah. So she's a character I already liked. So I expected that I would like her in this game, and I did.
Yeah.
Nadine is the one that I didn't like from Uncharted 4. I felt like she was underused, and the little bit she was used, I didn't care about her.
Same here.
But when I went into this game and you get to see her, even though you're not controlling her, she's always pretty much there with you, and you are constantly talking to her. You're kind of getting to learn more about her background and why she's even there in the first place and what her future looks like. That's when I was like, you know what? I like Nadine. And to be honest with you, as a white supremacist sexist, it's shocking that I love both of these characters because they're both women, and one of them's black, and
the other one's Indian.
Absolutely, yeah.
Neither one of them are white or male.
But I actually love both of these characters, and I love them together. Yeah. They have great chemistry, and it does take you back to like Nate and Sully. I'm not going to sit here and say they're better than Nate and Sully. I love Nate and Sully. But I will also say you also had 4 games. I was just trying to make sure Sully was in all 4 of them. 4 games with Nate and Sully paired up a lot.
Well, really 5. Wasn't Sully in Golden Abyss? I think he was in Golden Abyss too.
I didn't play all the way through that one. I played probably about 6 hours, and I don't remember being there really.
But no, I agree with that comparison, by the way. Just, the Nate-Sully interaction, the way they're kind of ribbing each other and sarcastically answering stuff, but also having serious moments. I totally agree with that comparison. Even Nate and Elena at times, even though theirs was a lot more of a, love relationship that was budding, there was still some friendship jabbing going on there. And I think Chloe and Nadine's interactions, the 2 actresses who played them, I want to say it was Claudia Black and Ashley Birch. Was it Ashley Birch?
I don't remember.
Or Lauren Bailey. I can't remember who.
Laura Bailey, I think, does Nadine.
Or Laura Bailey. They were great. So the acting is fantastic, and their interactions, the writing is so clever. So to me, the highlight of this game, yes, it's beautiful to look at. The combat, for the most part, the moving around is very fun. The characters make this game, in my opinion.
Yes. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that they are definitely comparable to Nate and Sully. And as somebody who, again, I want to make sure I say this, not that we have a lot of new listeners or whatever, I'm not the type of person, you will never see me pushing for PC, gotta make sure we have more women in games, more blacks no, not gonna happen. Don't care about that crap. But if you can give me two characters that so happen to be women that are not white, and you can make them this good and this fun, I don't even care about them
Right.
being women or not white. I just
Yeah.
play them for who they are, and I walk
Yep.
away going, I might actually like them more than Nate and Sully. I'm not saying that they will end up being better than them, but if they do have a future, and yes, I am asking Naughty Dog to please have a future with these two, I think these two could sell a lot of games. I think they
Yeah.
worked well together. I found, this is one of the things I wanted to say. I found myself as playing Chloe and knowing Chloe's character is not the type. I should say this. She cares. She does care about characters or other people in the game. But when it comes down to making a personal decision or a business decision, most times she'll take the business decision. She'll
Right.
do what's more beneficial to her either then and now or in the future.
She's not
over
unlike Catwoman
yeah,
in that she's a quasi-hero. You mostly like her. She's, for the most part, likable, but when it comes down to it, she's kind of selfish. So I'm
she's
with you there.
going to make the decision that she thinks is best for her, even if that means sacrificing somebody that you were hoping she cared about, but she actually really does care about it. But again, based off her decisions, you don't always see that. So as I was playing this game, I remember thinking the entire time, don't screw Nadine over. Don't do it. Don't do it. And, and I'm not spoiling it. I don't know what happens. I'm not going to say anything. But I'm just saying that was how much I started to care for Nadine. That's how
Yeah.
much I cared about their relationship. I
Yep.
didn't want Chloe to screw it up. I didn't want Nadine to screw it up. I wanted them to be friends. Does that make
And
sense?
it's cool. Yeah, it does. And I was following exactly with the way your mind was going as I played it too. And I was very happy with the character progression that they each went through. They each are one way at the start of the game, and not only does their relationship with each other change over time as they get to know each other, but also their motivations and the decision they would have made at the start, I don't think is the decisions that they end up making by the end of the game in terms of how to do everything. What decisions I don't want to spoil anything, but there's some decisions they have to make later that I think are changed based on the experience that they have together throughout the game. So it's a really well-crafted character development. But what about the overall story? Just briefly, we don't have to talk long about this because we've already touched on it a bit. I didn't feel like the actual storyline, if you were to have it broken down in bullet points, here's the plot line from point A to point B, I don't think that was all that great, but I'm glad it wasn't some big twist-filled story. I'm glad it was really just this experience, this adventure of two characters that had their own sets of motivations and driving factors, and they both changed each other over the course of this experience. The overall story, the main villain they were going after, it was interesting, not bad, but I don't think all that remarkable. It just kind of gave them a reason to be together and develop as characters. So my overall take on the story was it was okay, nothing to get too excited about. It was the characters that made it really great.
I would agree. I think the story was put there. I think let me say this again, going back to, and I know we're going to talk about this later. This really truly isn't a $60 AAA game. I think if it was, like if they were like, this has nothing to do with Uncharted 4. This is just where Uncharted's going next. These are your two characters. This is a $60 game. I think you see a 12 to 18-hour game, and I think you see a more plot twisting, all over the place story, right?
Agreed.
Because this is part of the season pass, and it is a smaller experience. It took me, I think, 8 hours to beat it.
Yep.
This is a very straightforward story. I want this. I stole this from this. This guy's upset. We're going to go get this thing. Guess what? We're going to run into that guy that is upset with us. So it was very straightforward. There wasn't much to it, but I was completely okay. I would call it serviceable for
Yeah,
what
agreed.
they did nail, and that was what you already said, the characters. I think the whole point of the game was for players like us to play it and enjoy the combat, the scenery, and to really introduce us to, and I'm not saying they're doing this is the future of Uncharted. You
It would
know,
make sense. Yeah.
I really hope it is. I know after I played Uncharted 4, and I'm not going to spoil it, even though it's over a year old, the way the game ends, it's basically you think, well, if they make an Uncharted 5 or whatever they're going to do, this is where they're going to go with it.
Yeah, they seem to be leading you a certain direction.
Yes.
Right.
And I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. You're kind of losing me. If they say no, the way Uncharted 4 ends is the end of that story. It's done. You're not gonna continue on as a certain person that you think you might be continuing on as. We're gonna now make Uncharted games with different characters you already knew and their adventures.
Right.
And you pick a Chloe and Nadine, I would totally be on board with that.
I think they will, and I actually think they'll end up tying in some older characters from back in previous games, maybe even some older storylines, some of the mythology that they've introduced. They've got a lot of potential there to reintroduce some stuff in new ways with these two new characters.
But
because
they
they're
nailed
different
these two
in nature.
characters. They really
Yeah.
did. I think
It
this
was
was
great.
a test game. I think it was to see how you got to understand. I do pay attention to this stuff. While it is more, you are seeing more women in games. If you really pay attention, a lot of times women are showing up as leads on DLC and expansions. Dishonored 2 is doing it as well. And it's not just these two games. Go look back, you'll see it. There's a lot of games that have a male
Well,
protagonist.
Naughty Dog's done this before, where you
Yeah.
had Last of Us.
Yes.
The
And
Last
then
of Us
you'll-
DLC.
Exactly. And then you'll see the DLC is almost like a test. Like, all right, let's put the women as the lead. Did it do well? It did well. Okay, now we can make a game with a woman. Full-fledged 60-hour game.
By the way, we should talk about this maybe sometime this fall as we are kind of reflecting on the year. This has been a remarkable year for women lead characters in games, and it's not even a year that has a Tomb Raider game. So it's a year that's been full of female lead characters. There's been a variety of lead characters and some really great ones, but female leads in particular have been a key character, if not the key character, in many of our major releases this year. It's been very interesting. We'll have to do some, maybe kind of look back on that and kind of see how that's broken down and what we think about it too. And of course, putting all joking aside, I think it's been really interesting to see these really well-told stories, well-fleshed out characters, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, or their gender. We're able to experience a story with them and really like that character and go along. If it's well done, then like you said earlier, and I know you were being serious, we like to joke around a lot,
Yeah.
but being totally serious, if it's well told and a character that's emotional and feels realistic, we don't really care what their
Most
specific
gamers
ethnicity or
don't,
sex
man.
is.
If you see, I just saw
Tell a good story.
GameSpot got hired some writer to write an article about this game, about Uncharted Lost Legacy, and she starts talking about how women aren't in games and blah, blah, blah. And I even put in the comments, and Jesse White saw it because he laughed at my comment. But I did it on the GameSpot post. I said, this article is relevant 20 years ago. Like, you're so ignorant to what is going on. Like, you're still writing that same clickbait article of women in gaming just aren't respected. Why can't we make more games like this? Hello, they're literally everywhere.
Yeah,
The white male lead protagonist might actually go extinct because it's literally everywhere. So I don't, going off your point, I and probably 99% of gamers out there do not give a crap about your character's weight or race. Weight. We don't care about
I don't care if you're skinny or fat. Bring it
your
on.
sexuality. I don't care about any of that if you're not forced and tacked on, and don't sit there and act like we're stupid and we're only going to say it's forced if it's something we don't like. You can tell when somebody's trying to shove something in your face and say, accept it, be tolerant.
Right.
No, just make a good character. Make Nadine and Chloe good characters. There was a couple times Chloe said stuff in the game that made me smirk because I knew she was making fun of. It was like that fourth wall, making fun of like how games are made and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there
that
is
stuff.
a part early in the game when they're talking about the Drake brothers, and I will mention this. I thought this was really funny. They talk about the Drake brothers briefly, actually a number of times throughout their conversations, and Nadine just recently had a bad run-in with those brothers in Uncharted 4, right? She's one of the villains against them, and they're villains to her, really, from her perspective. And what was interesting is the way she said, well, what do you know about Sam? And then Chloe goes, not much really. He just seemed to appear out of thin air.
Yeah.
And it was just really funny. I feel like that was a little nod to the fans of the series, acknowledging that, yeah, we kind of just pulled him out of nowhere. Like I'm with you. I like that they can do that. I think Chloe's a perfect character to deliver that kind of sarcastic fourth wall breaking.
Nobody cares. And like you said, all we care about, and if you go read most of the comments, even in that GameSpot stupid article, trash article, and I read it. Most of the comments were, we don't care as long as they're a good character. If you don't force bull crap on us, we won't care. When you try to force it on us, that is when you're going to see resistance. That's
Agreed.
the same with anything. If you're making a character for the sake of checking off a box and saying, well, we made a black character, we made a woman character, we made an Indian character. If you're just doing that, people will figure it out and they will resist. If you make a good character and go, yeah, we do want her to be black and female because we don't see it a lot, well, let's make her awesome. Let's not just sit there and say over and over, look at her character, she's black and she's female and she's strong. Like, just make her a fun character. Like I said, I didn't like Nadine in Uncharted 4. I thought she was annoying and they were making her
she's a very one-note, I'll beat you up military leader
and
type.
It was kind of annoying how, like,
but what's
Nathan
interesting is
couldn't
they
do
talk
anything
about
to her.
the fallout from Uncharted 4 with Nadine in this game, and I guess I didn't really follow it that closely. I didn't really care about. I guess Shoreline was the name of her paramilitary group that she ran, and her dad had handed it off to her, and I was like, I forgot about all that stuff. So I feel like there were missed opportunities to make her a much more interesting character in Uncharted 4, and I'm really glad they gave us another shot at getting to know her in this game because it worked. I'm with you. I cared a lot more about her. She's a completely different person from Chloe, and yet their partnership does work. Where one of them is like incredibly knowledgeable about history and, treasure hunting and is more sneaky. That's Chloe. The other one is an incredible fighter, a great combat strategist, and that's Nadine. And so it was a very interesting dynamic those two had, and I loved it. And I'm with you. I'd love to see more of these two characters. Speaking of which, let me ask you this as we wrap up. Number one, do you think this game should be considered a standalone game or a DLC/expansion of Uncharted 4?
I think the answer is both. I mean, when I do my Game of the Year list or my top 10, am I going to include it? Yes. But keep in mind, I wanted to include The Witcher 3's Blood and Wine, so I'm a little bit more loose when it comes to, like, hey, this is a long game or this is, a separate experience. Now, The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine was tied into The Witcher 3. Yeah. This game is not tied into Uncharted 4 in any way. When I say tied in, I'm talking story-wise. The only thing that's tied with it is Nadine. That's it. Other than that, the game is separate. You're on a mission Chloe is doing. Chloe is not Nathan Drake. So it is separate. It feels more standalone. Again, I think the only reason why we got an 8-hour experience that has more of a straightforward story is because they decided to make this for their season pass, which they had already sold. And I don't think when they sold it, I do think these companies think ahead. I don't think they planned on doing this. I think they planned on DLC, single player DLC, but they were probably thinking, let's make 2 or 3 hour experiences. Yeah. Maybe make 2 of those. You know how most of them do. And then I think as they started making it, they're like, why don't we take these 2 characters here and just make a whole another experience? Yeah, and so I do think it is a standalone experience. I think you could tie it in either way. I don't think any person's wrong. If somebody says they want to put it on their top 10 games, Game of the Year list, I don't think they're wrong in doing it. I think if somebody said, no, I won't do that, it'll be in my DLC list, I don't think you're wrong in doing that. For me, it's already in my top 10. I'll tell you right now, spoiler alert, it's in my top 5 for this year easily. I scored it very high on my review, which I won't reveal until we do our end of the year show. I'm writing my scores down. I'm tracking on a spreadsheet. I'm constantly shifting games in and out, and it immediately went in my top 5, passing a lot of games that I played this year. Because I had, there was never a moment I didn't have fun. And
Totally.
keep in mind, I don't think 8 hours is bad. I think 8 hours for a game is good. I'm a firm believer in replaying games, as you've seen in the past couple of years. I keep going back and playing games. So I know I'll play this game again for just the fun of it. But yeah, it's definitely a game that I consider a standalone game that can go on your top 10 or game of the year list.
Yeah, and I right now I am leaning towards both after hearing your feedback as well as feedback from some in our community and my own personal opinion. I think this game does deserve to be given the opportunity for Game of the Year discussions, both specifically for Fathers of the Grind when we do ours, but also just broadly. I think this game is deserving of getting that consideration. When I think of games like Super Mario Galaxy 2, when you look at that game, it was a beautiful game, really well done, some really creative stuff, but it's really built off of Super Mario Galaxy 1, the first one. Mm-hmm. There's not that much different there. It's pretty much the same graphics engine, maybe with a few tweaks here and there. It's a bigger game, you could give it that, but really there's not much different. The experiences are very similar. They're both very high quality, and so I think of this as the same way. It's building off of Uncharted 4, but it's a totally separate experience. You can buy it separately. You don't have to have played any previous Uncharted games to jump in and enjoy it as a standalone story experience. To me, it is its own game. It is a smaller version of most Uncharted games from this franchise, but that doesn't mean it's not worthy of Game of the Year any more than Hellblade is, because that game was only $30. Mm-hmm. That one still deserves Game of the Year consideration as well, obviously. So I say yes. I do agree with what you said earlier. I think there's a good potential of this thing starting some sort of new series. I really hope it is, at least, because these two characters are fantastic. I'd actually be interested if they did a series of Uncharted games featuring a number of different characters that we've met over the years. But these two in particular I would really enjoy. In terms of comparing it to other Uncharted games, the only ones that I liked more than this, you know what? It's hard to do that. We'll have to do a full ranking, I suppose, at some point. Mm-hmm. To me, this is right at the top. It's right up there with Uncharted 2. And for me personally, I also loved Uncharted 3 and 4. 2 is probably objectively and subjectively the best of the series. I think this one's right up there with that in terms of just flat-out enjoyment, good storytelling, great characters. This one's definitely up there. And, yeah, it's definitely worth your time and attention and money if you haven't played it yet.
I liked it more in Uncharted 4, but that was because, and I didn't talk about it too much, but I will just say real quick. I said in the beginning, it's kind of, they put you in the game and they're like, this is Chloe, this is Nadine, and boom.
Yeah.
Commence. And it's, when I mean by boom, commence, it's all action all the time. It's straightforward. Go do this, go do that. Another thing we didn't talk about is they have a huge, well, I won't say huge, but for this style of game, they have a huge open area. And what I liked about this, it was almost like, again, this was kind of like a test, like a feeler. Like Uncharted 4 has some open areas, but there's not much to explore. This actually has like almost like a hub world where you can explore it in any way you want. Like there's like 4 or 5 main locations you can go to.
But it wasn't overwhelmingly big.
No.
Which a lot of times these open world games, speaking of which, Ghost Recon or some of these others, they can feel overwhelmingly huge in terms of how do I get
Well, when I
done.
first entered the area and I saw, you open up your map and there's like these main locations you're supposed to go to, I was like, oh crap. I thought this was supposed to be a short experience. How is this open area going to allow me to be a short experience? And then once you actually play, you're like, okay. It took a little while, but it did.
You can navigate it pretty quickly.
Yeah. It felt like maybe a chapter and a half. It ends up being a chapter, but it felt longer than a normal chapter. But the way they did it, it's kind of a short experience. It wasn't too overwhelming. But I like that it gave you the freedom, and then after you do that, you're kicked back into the normal style of Uncharted.
Little pro tip: when you're in that open area, I do recommend, if you've got any interest, collect those 11 medallions if you are into finding all the treasures, because what those do for you is they unlock an item that then anytime you're near a treasure, there'll be a little noise and vibration in your controller to let you know that there's a treasure nearby. So it's nice if you're trying to collect all of the treasures.
Yep.
All right, let's keep moving on here. We do both believe it should be a Game of the Year contender, I think, but yes, we would respect someone who would say the opinion of someone who would say, no, this is part of Uncharted 4's DLC. I get that too.
Yeah.
And then lastly, my thought was, and you already answered a lot of this, how does it compare to other recent DLC that's out there? I do think it compares to stuff like Wolfenstein: The Old Blood. A standalone experience. It's very much tied to the main game. It looks and feels and plays a lot like the same game, but it's a different story.
Yeah.
A very different experience. Whether or not it's as good, that's a different discussion, but I think it's similar in terms of tone and the way it's built. I think it's going to be like the Dishonored 2 DLC that's coming up. I think a lot of people are the Outsider one. People are talking about that being similar in terms of it's a separate experience but tied to the main Dishonored 2 game. So I think this is very high quality. It's a great standalone experience. Can't say enough about it. Spoiler alert for me as well. It's right now in my top 5. We'll see how things shake out with Destiny 2, Shadow of War, Mario Odyssey, Wolfenstein 2, Assassin's Creed Origins. We have a lot of games to go before we finalize those lists. But for right now, in the first 8 months of this year, this is one of the best experiences that I've had in video games.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you were, and I know there's a few, like my brother liked Uncharted 4, but he didn't love it like most of the people in our group. Jesse White liked Uncharted 4, but he definitely did not love it like most people in the group. This is not the same as Uncharted 4. Yes, it has the same feel and look, but the actual game, the way it dives in, there's no filler. It's just boom, boom, boom. It really felt like a true Indiana Jones experience. And when I play Uncharted, that's what I want. I don't want...
And that's what we got.
I don't want the struggle of, is Nate going to retire? How's his marriage? I don't care. I want him on a trip to go find a chest or a treasure. That's what I care about, and that's what I got with Chloe. Chloe is like, she's not tied down by anything. She's just after what she's after.
Yes, but I agree with that. But what adds that extra flavor, that extra layer of character development is that's what she wants to do, but she can't help but get attached to and build relationships with the people that are with her. Yeah. So that's what adds weight to it and makes them good characters. But I'm with you. It keeps that kind of lighthearted summer blockbuster movie feel to the whole thing. And boy, what a fun game. Highly recommend it if you haven't played it yet.
Yeah, play it.
All right, well, that wraps up our... Hopefully,
it's better on Xbox One X, though, guys. Get it November 7th with Uncharted 4 Lost Legacy. Better on Xbox One X.
Yeah, it's going to be a great bundle deal. Derek alone is selling that bundle, so contact him if you want the Xbox One X Uncharted Lost Legacy bundle. He'll take care of that for you.
Derek Teague at whitesupremacist.com.
So that wraps up our spoiler-free review of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Let us know what you guys think as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And as the weeks unfold, we do have some additional major topics to cover. But as these big games roll out, next week we're going to talk about Mario plus Rabbids. In the weeks that follow, we'll be talking about things like Destiny 2 and so on and so forth. So we're going to be kind of trying to cover and give our impressions of these games. So for those of you who want to hear our thoughts, whether you're playing it and just want to hear more about it, or whether you're on the fence, we want to make sure you get a chance to hear about it as well. So, Eli, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining the show. All right, thank you guys for listening. We're out for this week. We'll see you next time.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things here.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?